Rund eine halbe Milliarde Euro hat Brüssel hier investiert, erzählt mir der Fotograf Roger Tiley.
Roger Tiley was born and bred in the valleys. His pictures capture the black and white, coal dust, gritty reality of the pits, the miners, and their wives.
The award-winning photographer Roger Tiley was 24 years old when the South Wales miners walked out on strike in 1984. His photographs were published around the world and became some of the defining images of the decade.
March 1984. The mines and communities across South Wales were about to be transformed forever. The year-long strike that followed was bitter and brutal. A young photographer from the Gwent Valleys captured every angle of the dispute, not from afar, but up close and personal.
And witnessing it close up was Roger Tiley, then a young press photographer whose subjects emerged from the pits to take on the state. He documented the violence, the hatred towards the strike breakers, the poverty of those who went for months unpaid, as well as the deep social alliances which saw the South Wales miners lead the strongest strike of them all.
I grew up in the coal mining South Wales valleys in the 1960s. We used to go on holidays to the seaside. Dad always had his cine camera filming us enjoying ourselves. My brother was 4 years older than me. I was always mischievous. I think I used to annoy him most of the time. When the films arrived back from the developing house, we used to sit around the screen and watch these films. There wasn't any sound. This is one of the visits to Rochdale in Lancashire, where my Gran Tiley was from. This is Grandpa Tiley. He was a coal miner, along with my Grandpa Evans. He also worked in the pit. His brother was killed at the age of 15 underground. Back in the 1990s, I filmed my mum and talked to her about her father, my grandfather.
My grandfather was an overman in the pit of 9 Mile Point. I can remember him, and I can remember my grandmother. They were a lot of children. And I remember my father and my uncle, my 2 uncles, worked in 9 Mile Point pit. My grandfather made them go down the pit. My father was a very good scholar and obtained a place at Pontywayn Grammar School. But my grandfather made him go down the pit with my other 2 uncles. My father's brother Lewis, at 14, 15 years of age, he was down in the mine and he brought his first wage packet home, and unfortunately a week after he was killed in the pit. And they lived in Wattsville, and he was buried at Mynylyswyn Church, which is up at Portland Fry. And I mean, I wasn't born then, but we were told that the men from 9 Mile Point pit carried the coffin from 9 Mile Point pit right up to Mynylyswyn Church.
My first recollection of coal mining tragedy was during the 1966 Aberfan disaster, when a coal tip covered a school and houses as it slid down the hillside, killing 116 children and 28 adults. I lived some 15 miles away down the valley and remembered my gran saying that there had been a terrible accident. I would have been the same age as Elizabeth O'Brien, a survivor from the disaster. I interviewed and filmed her in 2003.
I can remember going to school, because I lived here, I did, where I am now, and the living room was downstairs, and we were rushing to school late, and Arthur, my brother, as we were running out the door, I always had to be first, and out through the gate, and he shouted back to my mother, "Mum, if you don't tell her to stop it, she's going to get killed one of these days." It was unbelievable. We went across the road and we spoke to one of the neighbours, and we just proceeded to school.
Cliff Mynette's son and daughter lost their lives in the disaster, and his surviving daughter was rescued with a broken leg.
I worked 20 years in the pit. With the Whale Colliery 9 years, and the other down in Triaris Colliery. So when I attended that school that morning, I knew with the material coming down, there wasn't much chance of getting anybody out of there. Although we did have a few out of there, my own daughter, one. But as I say, it was the experience that I knew at that time, being a miner, there wasn't a lot of chance, not of that material, because there was no air in it. It was a solid material. And by the end of the day, the stuff was solidified like a concrete. That was it. It always reminded me of lava coming down a mountain. And that's the way it looked to me. But there was nothing could stop it.
Did the miners come to help?
The miners was one of the Merthyr Vale Colliery miners was up there within, say, hour and a half, with all the tools. Triaris Colliery as well, the miners were outstanding. I'd say that. And people come from all over the valleys, walking over the valleys, from that valley to that valley. It was coming over, and you could see them coming down the mountain, trying to help. But it was too late. 9:15 that morning, 9:20, it was all over. All over, bar the screaming. And terrible to hear women screaming like that. Have you seen my Tommy? Have you seen my, you know, naming people? What could you do? How some come from that, I don't know. I don't know how they come from that.
As a photographer and filmmaker, Aberfan is a difficult place to visit with a camera. Over the years I've taken photographs there, and people have welcomed me with open arms. When I visit, it's a time to pay my respects to those who lost their lives on the 21st of October 1966. I never thought I'd be a photographer, it just happened. I was studying for A-levels at Sixth Form College when my tutor threatened to kick me out for not attending lectures. A way of survival for my college days was that my tutor said that he was starting a brand new photography course, and as he was short of students, he asked me to join. It was my only option, so I said yes. After 2 years I finished college and was successful in gaining a job as an apprentice industrial photographer. I stayed there for 4 years, but my love was for documentary photography. I gained a place on the renowned documentary photography course at Newport College of Art. It was such an inspirational course. David Hurn of Magnum fame was the course leader. He very kindly invited me to his home recently to talk to him about the course and the structure and how he came up with the idea.
The art college, it was an art college there, said, look, we don't have a photo course here, we'd like one. Would you put forward a proposal for what it could be, you know? So I knew nothing about anything. You know, I'd been asked to talk occasionally in London and things. And so I sat down, Sir Tom Hopkinson, who had been the editor of Picture Post, was living in Penarth, and so I went to talk to him a little bit about that, and I talked to other people, you know, to Philip and Don and Ian, and I remembered that I had done a terrific amount of learning in my own case through looking at the contact sheets. I had an entree to John Hillison, who was the Magnum agent in London, and I used to, with Ian, we used to go and spend time looking at the contact sheets of, you know, Cartier-Bresson and Mark Reber, and I just learned so much from looking at the contact sheets. And one of the things that always amazed me was that how similar the way that these people shot were. They didn't just shoot the odd single pictures. They nearly all shot in little series of about half a dozen pictures. It was, and I began to learn that photography is about, you know, there's only really two controls. You know, where do you stand and when do you press the button? But it seems to me that the job of photography is to enhance, to increase your emotion, to puzzle you, to do all these sort of things by pictures, not by pages of text, you know. So anyway, that's how the course really came about. I think it was considered to be highly successful. But I, right from the beginning, said that I wasn't the least bit interested in anything to do with universities, etc. Not because I have anything against university, it's just that by definition it meant the government was saying that like 20% of your course had to be theoretical. And that seemed to me a waste of 20% of the time that you could be learning to shoot pictures, you know. So the second that the course, you know, the course went through phases. Each time I hated it more and more, you know. It became a college of higher education and then a something else, and then but the second that they told me it was going to be a university degree, I left. You know, I didn't think it was possible to do what I was doing. And also by that time I'd learned that, you know, so much time was wasted in faculty boards with, you know, honourable, decent, nice, intelligent people all telling me how to teach photography.
I bought this bag especially to come on the course in 1982.
Oh, how wonderful!
So it's still going
strong. You're still going
The
strong.
strap is a little bit...
And is that a donkey, is it?
It's a Billingham.
A Billingham bag.
Billingham bag.
Yeah, it's wonderful how Billingham made these wonderful bags. Donkey, I think Donkey made wonderful.
Are they still around?
So what?
Are they still around?
Both of them are, yes,
Yeah,
I think. Yeah.
But a bag like this would cost around about £200 or £300.
Yeah, and it probably cost.
I think I paid about £50.
Yeah.
And that was a lot in
that
time.
that at that time.
But I started the course in 1982.
Yeah.
And
I
1982 to 84, it was the first year that it went to HND.
There were numerous notable international photographers sharing their experiences whilst I studied at Newport. Martin Parr was one of my favourites.
So I started teaching at Newport around 1982, and I just got back from Ireland, and I was looking for work, and I'd met up with David Hurn, and he offered me some part-time teaching there, which is what I did. So I used to go 2 days a week at Newport, and I think then I did 2 days a week at Farnham. So between those two colleges, it sort of kept me going 4 days a week, which of course was enough money to live off. It's very much David's baby. He set up the course. They had this, this sort of very systematic way of starting, man at work, 5-picture story, etc. And of course I couldn't disagree with that and was happily fitting in with that into that sort of system that the college had established. But of course the great thing about it is that generally the students are very motivated, they're very keen, and the way he selected the right students for the college meant that you weren't dealing with people who weren't interested in photography. They wanted to go out there, they all wanted to get work, they all wanted to create these stories and have the ability to be a photojournalist. And that was back in the day when magazines were still paying for assignments. In these days now, that would be a lot more difficult. If you put the effort in, then inevitably your work is going to be good, because it's about obsession, it's about making that connection to the subject matter. These are the things that are important. And it was great to actually see these young photographers coming up and performing very well. And many of them have gone on, the people I taught, have gone on and made fantastic careers for themselves. So, I do feel a sense of pride in having made a contribution to those people.
I remember our first task at Newport was to photograph man at work,
and we were sent out to photograph different people working on the streets, digging the roads, cleaners, anything really. And you had to shoot maybe 2 or 3 rolls of film of the same person, and then go back to college, process the film, and make a contact sheet, and then see one of the lecturers for a critique, and they would tell you basically where you were going wrong and how you could improve, and then you were sent back out. And this happened for about, I think it was about 6 weeks, where you were just photographing man of work, and eventually you get moved on to the next little task, which is relationships, and then after that you go on to, I think it was portraits and 3 picture stories, establishing shots, and 5 picture stories eventually. So that was the first year, and it was a really good grounding because you built from sort of the base up and developed your skills, not just as a documentary photographer, but also to communicate and form a relationship with the people that you're photographing, which has been extremely important through my career.
After spending 4 years working as an industrial photographer, I could use the skills I learned with technical issues such as lighting and adapt them to my documentary work. I became used to working in difficult conditions, noise of machinery and dirty conditions in factories. The 1980s would certainly be an important decade to record what was about to happen. A year-long strike, pit closures, and the South Wales Valley's communities changing forever. In the early 1980s, there were around 8 pits still working in the valley I grew up in. Seeing coal mines in production was a natural sight. In 1976, when I was just about to leave school, the careers teacher asked me, "Do you want to work as a miner?" I declined the offer, but many of my friends went to work in the coal and steel industry. It was a natural route to employment.
I remember back in 1983, the first photograph I took of a coal miner was of my Uncle Bill, and he worked in Bedworth Colliery. When I arrived at the house, he came in, and he was a fantastic man, really hard-working, honest man. And I took his photograph, and you can see that he has black under his eyes from the shift in the colliery. And not only that, my auntie owned a corner shop, and Uncle Bill actually worked in the bakery making the bread ready for the corner shop. So he came straight home from night shift, from working underground, to going into the bakery and then making bread for the shop.
I've made many friends in the mining communities over the years. Ivor Herbert was a miner at the Calenna South Colliery in the Gwent Valleys. I lost contact with him for many years, but made contact via his daughter through social media. He showed me an album of photographs he had collected of my images capturing him at the colliery. I felt honoured that he still had the pictures.
Now that's a marvellous photo there, look. A marvellous photo. Well, I started in the pit at 1938. And Dad buried in 1937. And he said to my mother, "Don't let my boy go down the pit." He said, it didn't fit with him now because he's only a young boy. But as soon as he died, I went down the pit. Well, it was only the pit to go to because there was nothing else. And the insurance man that used to come there, he used to work in the pit, you know, collecting for the insurance. He said, "When you go up and see the manager, you get a job straight away." And I did. I had a job straight away.
Can you remember having your photo taken?
Yeah, I can. I give you like a pictures today. Yes.
Was that your new son's?
No, it was marvellous in Israel. It come out lovely.
I only had permission to visit the Colena South Colliery once, where Ivor worked. The miners told me that I was welcome as much as I liked, so if the mine manager was around, they would hide me behind the door. I made many friends on my numerous visits. One day I was heading down to the pithead bars to take photos, and a miner stopped me and said, "Rog, you have to take your clothes off to go in the pithead bars." So I listened to him, took all my clothes off. All I had was a camera and flash gun, no place to store any spare films, and I proceeded into the baths. Little did I know, I didn't have to take my clothes off at all, because there was a corridor which I could walk down and take my pictures. When I photographed Ivor, he was very surprised to see me naked.
To clean him.
During 2015, there was an exhibition of my work of the miners. Ivor travelled up on the bus to see the exhibition. It was his 90th birthday, and we bought him a birthday cake and presented it to him during the exhibition. Sadly, Ivor passed away soon after. The coal mine was the centre of many valley communities. I felt it important to document these areas as they were the hub of valley life. Mardy, at the top of the Ronde de Vac, was a bustling village with employment for many men in the local pits. I met and photographed Roy Jones, a miner at Mardy Colliery, back in 1983.
I am the sixth and the last generation of miners on both of my grandparents' side. My father died of pneumoconiosis. My oldest brother worked in the colliery at one time before he finished and went elsewhere and got married and what have you. But my father used to work in that old colliery. It's gone now, behind you, until he was diagnosed with pneumoconiosis and he had to finish underground. Oh, when I was growing up, it was an exciting time in the Ronde. The community spirit was very strong. We all worked together in the colliery. We had the club in Mardy Hall open, which was brilliant on the weekend. It was a fabulous time. And of course there was no baths in number 9, so we had to come home and bath in front of the fire, then a tin bath in my mother's house. And your clothes would be ripped and damaged through working, and you had to walk home like that, you know. There was one chap died. Nobody went on holidays, but he did go one year. Him and his wife went to Scotland. And when he came home, the boys were saying, "What was it like there when he was there?" "Oh, fabulous. The food, brilliant. The hotel, oh, it's fabulous." And one of the boys said, "When he was there, did you see Ben Nevis?" He said, "Seen him, I was bloody talking to him." The characters, eh?
Oh, what's called up there? Mardy pit, number 4 shaft inside, number 3 was a bit further down, and the washery, and well, but not the washery, the others.
Trevor Morgan was another miner I met at Mardy Colliery before the miners' strike of 1984-85.
Two characters in there too. See that saw working, 6 foot in diameter. Oof. You have to be very careful.
And when you got a job in Mardy Colliery, What was it like? So it was your first colliery, wasn't it? So
first and only colliery, yeah. Well, I'm saying first and only colliery. We had to go to over Ystad somewhere for training. So that was the first time I actually went underground, not in Mardy, over in, I can't remember the name of the place now, but it was a training phase, you know. You had to do 2 or 3 weeks over there, or a month, or whatever it was, and then come back to Mardy and wait for your chance to go underground to start training in the coalface. Not just the coalface, but outside as well, headings and what have you. And yeah, the first time I went down in Mardy, it was a bit of an experience, as you could imagine. Never seen anything like it before or since.
Coal mining was a dangerous occupation. There were numerous accidents, many fatal. Over the years, thousands of men and boys had lost their lives in mining disasters. It was compulsory for each coal mine to be covered by the Mines Rescue Service. Miners from each pit volunteered to train at their local mines rescue station. They would learn to be the first to respond to an underground incident. They were brave men. As part of their training, they would wear heavy breathing apparatus. Working in confined spaces and humid temperatures of 40 degrees Celsius, they hoped that they would not have to carry out a rescue for real. But many did, as the mining industry was a dangerous occupation. I remember it being a difficult subject to photograph, as my lens steamed up and sweat from my brow dripping onto the viewfinder.
Industries like gas, nuclear power or coal imports, rather than the British mining industry. It's not simply about privatisation. It's about this blind ideological hatred of a government who are determined to destroy not only the NUM, but render ineffective trade unionism wherever.
This year, as before in our history, we've seen men and women with brave hearts defying violence, scorning intimidation, and defending their rights to
I think the
uphold
unions are
our
obviously
laws.
one body where a fanatical, tiny fanatical minority can and seem to be able to take over a whole union and then say that they represent the whole union. Some of the tactics they use are to hold meetings at very short notice in places not advertised, and they somehow take over. You get the same thing sometimes in students' unions, where those who are keenest on work can't go to meetings and stay on and on and on and on and on, and then find that the vote isn't taken until there are only a few left, and those are the fanatics. This, I'm afraid, has become almost a standard tactic, both in Britain and its own.
What's the point of fetching a 74-year-old man over from America and paying him £1 million out of mine workers' pension scheme to sack 180,000 miners? I mean, anybody could have done that.
The 1984-85 miners' strike. Well, yeah, there's a lot of memories. I remember I was just about to finish at college on a documentary photography course, and then they announced the miners' strike. And I'd had some experience because the South Wales miners went on strike the year before in 1983, so I took some pictures of that. I don't think it lasted that long, but at least I had some experience of photographing the strike. But the year-long strike was something else. It was a massive learning curve for me as a photographer and as a person as well. And really it's taught me to never give in with things, you know, to keep pushing and carrying on. But the strike was pretty incredible, something I thought I'd never witness.